Welcome back to my channel, wonderful soulmate. So in today's tutorial we are going to be learning how to make men's shirt, okay, with bishop collar. Okay, so this is going to be a men vintage shirt with bishop collar. So if this is what you love to learn, I urge you to please stay tuned to the end of this tutorial. So this is the fabric I'm working with, and I am going to go ahead to cut out the front part. Okay, so here is the front part that we are going to be working with, and I went on to fold it into two, so it is folded into two. Okay, so um this front part now is going to be 30 inches by length. Okay, so I'm working with length of 30 inches, and after the length I set aside 2 inches here for hemming allowance. Okay, that is why I label it as allowance. Okay, so if you also notice, you will see that I mark label my waistline. So how I got this fold is by measuring the biggest part of the measurement, that is from the shoulder to the length. The biggest part is where you're going to pick, then you're going to divide into four, and that is what I did. So I divided it to four, and that is here, and I added extra 4 to 5 inches allowance, and this includes allowance for the button allowance and also for ease allowance. Okay, so I went on to measure here as shoulder, that is SH. Okay, so here is my shoulder line. I also measure my waistline and my length and allowance. Okay, so um I'm going to fold in 2 inches here at the beginning of this fabric here, and these 2 inches that I'm folding in here is going to be for our button allowance. Okay, so right now if you have your iron, go ahead and iron these 2 inches down so that it will enable the fabric to stay in place while you draft on it. It will enable the 2 inches to stay in place. But if you don't have your iron close by, please go ahead and use your pin to secure it, because that is exactly what I am doing. So I'm using my pins to secure it, and I'm just going to be measuring to ensure that I have that same 2 inches from the beginning to the end. So as I measure, I'll pin down, I'll measure and I'll pin down, and that is just what I'm going to be doing. Okay, so at this point I was done measuring, and I'm just going to set this aside. So I was done pinning, sorry, and I'm going to set this aside. And here is another fabric that I cut out, and this one now is going to be for our back part, and it's also folded into two just as the front part. Okay, so there are differences between the initial one we folded and this one. And now one of the different here is that this one is longer by 3 inches. Remember the other one I had 30 inches plus 2 inches hemming allowance. Now here, this one here is longer by 3 inches, and you can see I mark on the 32 and I still have extra 3 inches, because the other one was 30 inches plus 2 inches hemming and that is 32, right? Then this one here I mark 32 and I have extra 3 inches, that is 35. Do you get? So I'm marking on that 3 inches, I'm measuring, I'm marking that 3 inches, and I'm just going to connect with my ruler so that we can have that 3 inches set aside. Okay, so that is what you see me doing here. And another thing is that there won't be extra 2 inches allow as in button allowance for this one. So you can use that same biggest part of your measurement divided by 4. Then you can now add your ease allowance, which is 2 inches, 1.5 inches, or 1 inch, depending on what you choose. So um I brought back the initial one we folded, and I placed it exactly on the 3 inches back, and you can see here the upper part of the shoulder here, they are equal. Do you understand that? The upper part of the shoulder here, and here where we have our 2 inches button allowance fold, the front one is longer with just a quarter of an inch. So here I'm going to slope my shoulder by 1.5 inches. I will get my neck width of 3 inches here. Okay, I will mark on it, and after that I'm going to get my ruler and I'm going to connect this shoulder slope. Okay, so after connecting to this shoulder slope, the next thing I'm going to do is to get my scissors and I will cut out. Okay, so you can see I was done cutting out, and the next thing I'm going to do is to drag this one now down. Okay, I will take it down so that they will be equal at the hem. Okay, they will be equal at the hem now. Okay, can you see it? And the 3 inches different will now be at the upper part. Can you see it? Can you see the 3 inches different? It's now at the upper part instead of on the hem. So I'm going to secure this with my pin, ensuring that the one on top, which is the front, is longer than the down part, which is the back, with just a quarter of an inch. Okay, so now I'm going to overlap this one on top of it. I'm going to fold it on top of this front one like this. Okay, so please pay attention, you understand what I am doing. So I proceeded to fold it on top of it, ensuring that it's on top of it at least with half of an inch. It went in by half of an inch or quarter of an inch. It should overlap on it. Okay, and I'll also secure with my pin so that it stays in place while I mark on it. Okay, so that is what you see me doing here. I'm securing it with my pin. So it's also important, if you have your iron close by, you also iron here down. Okay, so can you see it? So if you don't have your iron, just go ahead and secure with your pins. Okay, so another thing that I'm going to do now is to measure my neck width. You remember I already marked neck width on the front part. I'm going to mark it again on this overlapped part, which is 3 inches. Okay, so remember we already slope our shoulder. So right now I'm going to measure my shoulder divided by 2. Okay, so I'm going to mark it. So here is it, my shoulder divided by 2, and from there I'm going to measure my round armhole divided by 2, and I'll proceed to mark it. Okay, so remember that the armhole for men is not supposed to be too tight. Okay, so that should be done when you are measuring. Just make it as loose as possible. Okay, so I proceeded to connect, and this is what we have. This is the line. I proceeded to mark, sorry, and I'll divide it into two to get the midpoint here, as you can see, and I'll come in by 0.5 inches there in the center and measure my chest circumference divided by 4. Okay, and I'm just going to mark. Okay, so the next thing is to curve the armhole for the front. Okay, so coming in with 0.5 inches, also apply for the armhole for the front armhole for men as well, and just as we do for women, this coming in doesn't imply at the back. So I proceeded to connect the initial one, which is the front armhole, and also connect the second part, which is the back armhole. Please take note of that. Okay, so you can actually do without coming in by 0.5 inches, because this is men clothes, and as you know, it's not always very fitted like women own. Okay, so that have been done, and the next thing I'm going to do now is to raise this one up and come down by just 1.5 inches. Okay, I came down by 1.5 inches. Please, it should not be more than that, or you can go ahead and use the measurements you got after measuring your client. Okay, but mine here, I'm using 1.5 inches. So I came down by 1.5 inches after lifting the back part up. So I measured that 1.5 inches on the front part. Okay, and I proceeded to connect with my curved ruler, as you can see here. Okay, so this is how you're going to connect it to form the round neckline, and I proceeded to overlap this upper part back. So here now, here, okay, here, I hope you can see it. I'm going to measure in 0.5 inches. I'm going to measure where these two lines meet, these 2 points. I'm going to measure in 0.5 inches. I'm not going to curve out like this as if I'm trying to make a circle there. Okay, a mini circle. So that is what you do as well. Okay, can you see it? So that is what I went on to do. And the next thing I'm going to do now is to arrange properly. And after arranging properly, I am going to be imputing my measurement. Okay, so I will impute my waist circumference divided by 4, and I will mark also my hip circumference divided by 4 here, and I will connect. So you can actually use the hip measurement for all the parts, especially if your client doesn't want it to be too fitted. Okay, no, we have some Jay-Z clients that want it to be very fitted, but if it's the one that doesn't want it to be very fitted, you can use your hip circumference. That is the biggest part for both the chest line and the waistline and the hip as well. So I proceeded to connect, and the next thing I'm going to do now is to get my scissors, and I'm going to cut out. So note that I'm going to be cutting out the back armhole curve. All right, so I was done cutting out, as you can see, and I cut out the back armhole curve just as I mentioned. Okay, so I was yet to cut out the neckline. I didn't want to cut it offline. I want you to see the way I'm cutting it. So you are going to lift up to just only the front part, please. This front part, can you see the way I raise it up, and you're just going to cut out. Okay, so this cutting here applies to only the front part here. Okay, please don't cut out the back part as well. Can you see? Then the back part, you are starting your cutting from here where you make this curve here. Then you also cut out here where it is folded. Can you see? And as you cut out through the curve that you made. Can you see it? So this is how you do it, please. Okay, so I'm going to measure, ensure that I have my 2 inches here, and I will notch. Okay, I will measure, ensure that I have 2 inches here, and I'm just going to notch. Okay, so you can see my notch there. So I placed a notch there so that when I open up, I will remember, as in it will show. Okay, so now it's time for me to go ahead and slit open here. So can you notice, do you notice where I'm slitting open? So I'm slitting open the button allowance. Okay, and I'm just going to remove my pins, and I'll slit open the button allowance. Okay, so that is what you see me doing here. So you can see what I have after I was done slitting through. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do now is to measure my round armhole so that we can cut out our sleeve. Okay, so I proceeded to measure my round armhole, and it will be time to cut out our sleeve. Okay, so I separated them because it was a kind of forgetting, so that I can cut out the front armhole. Okay, so I separated them and I cut out the front armhole. Okay, so the next thing we are going to do is that I'm going to go ahead to sew this button allowance part. So I'm going to be folding in 1/4 inch first, and after folding in 1/4 inch, I'll divide whatever is left on the 2 inches button allowance, divide into two, and stitch down, or hem down with my hemming gum. Okay, remember we had 2 inches, so when I sew with quarter, I'll be left with 1.75. Then I'll divide it into two and stitch down. Okay, so that is what I'm going to do. So this here is going to be for our sleeve, and I have two of this fabric, and both of them are folded into two. Okay, so can you see I have two, they are folded into two, and I have my desired sleeve length plus hemming allowance as well. Okay, so I'll come down by 4 inches here, and I'm going to mark. After marking, I'm just going to connect in a slopey form through the end, that is the folded part, like this. And the next thing I'm going to do is to measure the line and divide it into two. Okay, I will mark on the midpoint here, and after marking on the midpoint, I will divide the remaining part of the line again, this part, into two. Okay, to get another line, I will mark, and I'm just going to come down here by 0.5 inches, and upper part I'll go up by 0.5 inches, and I'm just going to connect. So I'm not making it too slopey like that of men's sleeve. You're just going to allow it to be a bit upper, okay, high at the upper part. And I'll go ahead and measure to ensure that I have the same thing as my armhole, around what I have on my round armhole. Okay, so I was okay with what I have, and I'm just going to measure my bicep divided by 2, that is round sleeve divided by 2, and I'll be adding only 1 inch to it, okay, for allowance. Okay, so that is all, and I'm going to cut out. Okay, so I proceeded to cut out, as you can see. So I'm just going to notch the midpoint like this, okay, and I'll set it aside. So I went on to sew 1/4 inch like I mentioned. Can you see it? I measure and ironed the remaining half. Can you see it? So I'm just going to fold it this way, okay, measure it, then fold it into two, okay, then I will stitch down, okay, like I said. So I have 0.1.75 left, and I'm just going to fold it like this and stitch, okay. So this is my sleeve. I fold in 1/4 inch as well, and I'll go ahead and hem as well, okay. So I'm going to use my hemming gum and hem it so that it looks very neat, okay. So I'm trying to make sure that I have my allowance, the exact allowance I added when I was cutting my sleeve, okay. So you hem with your exact allowance. So this one here now is the back part, and I'm just going to bring in the front part, which I was done sewing the, stitching down the button allowance. I'm going to place it front facing front, and I'll go back to my machine and join the two shoulders, okay. So after joining the two shoulders, this is what I have, and you can see what we have here, okay. You can see the folding on the zipper allowance side. I didn't show you initially, that's what I'm showing. So you can see where I joined the shoulder, it has fallen down, and that is how it's supposed to be, okay. So can you see? So you make sure that the armhole, they are equal at this armhole, and then you are going to notch what you have here, and where this notch is placed become the center of the shoulder line, okay. It becomes the shoulder line. So that is how you get it. Make sure that they are equal here, both tips are equal, then make sure that they are very equal, then you notch here, okay, because you can't follow the line where you join here, because the line where you join is below the exact shoulder line, and that is how my shoulder look like. It look like, it's more higher at that upper part. It's like a kind of fallen, okay. So after hemming my sleeve, it's time to place the notch part of my sleeve with the notch part of my main shirt, and I'm going to get my pins and I'll secure it. Do the same thing on the other side, and I'll go back to my machine to join the sleeve on my round armhole, okay. So after doing that, I'm going to bring it back for us to see. So go ahead and place notch part to notch part and join. So here is my pocket that I already cut out, and I added my hairstay to it, okay. I added my sorry, designing gum to it to make it stable, because this fabric is a bit stretchy. So I'm going to I made a curve around here. That's what I'm trying to demonstrate, and I iron in 0.25, and I went on to stitch it down exactly where I want my pocket to be, okay. Can you see it? I went on to stitch it down neatly on my shirt, okay. That is what I have here, okay. So you can see it, the look after I was done for sewing my sleeve to it, okay. So the next thing I am going to be doing, I did, was to join the side, and I left a slit around the both side about 6 inches, okay. I left a slit about 6 inches down on both side, okay. So I also hemmed it down, okay. So the next thing we are going to be doing now, you can see, is to sew here, sew the opening. So you can use your stitch to stitch it down so that it stays neat, or use your hemming gum here, okay, to stitch it down, okay. So you are going to choose which one works best for you. And the next thing we are going to do now is time for us to cut out our collar, okay. Remember, we are working with bishop collar, okay. So what you're going to do is to bring the fabric this way, and you're going to measure what you have in the right round collar. So you are dividing the neck, the fabric around the neckline into two. You are folding it into two, and you're just going to measure what you have in your round collar like this, okay. So that is what you see me doing here, and this is what I have about 10 inches here, okay. So I'm going to get my paper, and we are going to be cutting out the collar, okay, the bishop collar, okay. So that is what I have here. So I have this paper here, and I folded into two, just as the neck of my shirt was folded into two, all right. And I'm just going to be measuring, okay. So I am measuring and looking at getting my 10 inches, okay, on full, just as is exactly the same inches with my main fabric, okay, the shirt, the neckline of the shirt. So I'm going to be measuring 7 inches round, and after which I will be connecting. So this is exactly as if you're making a flay, you're trying to get your flay, okay. So I'll proceed to connect, and you can see what we have here. It's looking like round, and I am going to measure. I want to ensure that I have at least that 10 inches. If it's more than 10, you use the remaining for allowance. You can see I have exactly my 10 inches, and I'm very okay with that. So the wideness of my collar, I want it to be around 1.5 inches. You can actually make yours 1.25 or 1 inch, okay. It all depends on how small or big you want it to be. So mine here, I'm making use of 1.5 inches, and as you can see, I'm marking it round, okay. I'm marking it round here, okay. So please, there's something I want to correct here. You see, I have two lines here, and the down part is actually the part that is going to sit on the your neckline, okay, the down part of this marking of this collar. So even if this upper part is not up to 10 inches, don't bother yourself. Make sure that the down part is the one that should have the 10 inches, okay. I don't know if you get me, because that is actually a kind of the mistake I made here, though I adjusted it later. So I'm not bringing it to your notice. The down part of this collar should be what should have that exact 10 inches that you measured on your neckline, okay. Then the upper part, even if it's not up to 10 inches, it is not a problem, okay. So I proceeded to cut out. I curved here, as you can see, around this open side, the front part, okay, the center part. I made a small curve around there, and I believe you saw the way I curve it out, okay. So I just made a curve here to give it that look there, okay. So I was done cutting, and this is what so this is the curve I'm talking about, and here is what we have, okay. Okay, so what saved me is that when I measured it, I have about 10.5 inches on the down part, which was not bad. So I proceeded to make use of it, okay, on the down part side. So I went on to cut out on my main fabric, okay. I went on to cut out on my main fabric, and I added 0.5 inches here on this down part to join with the second part, and also added quarter of an inch here to also join, okay. So I cut out two pieces, one for my main fabric and one for my lining piece, as you can see here, okay. So I'm going to be removing my paper. You can see I remove my paper, and this one now I actually cut out the first one on my collar gum, and the second one on my main fabric, then my lining piece. So this white one you're seeing is my collar gum. So I'm going to infuse this collar gum on one part, the wrong side of one part, and that one will be serving as my main fabric, okay, my main collar, and this one here is going to be my lining piece. Okay, so I'll go ahead and infuse it. Then I'm going to be turning this part, okay, my lining piece. Okay, so I proceeded to infuse it first and come and show you what we have. And this part I added este because I didn't want a situation whereby it will become stretchy. Okay, so I wanted to put it in place. I wanted to hold it down in place so that it will be equal with the one that has collar gum. Okay, so because as I mentioned earlier, the fabric is stretchy, so I'm going to place it right side facing right side. I'm going to turn the upper parts, okay, and I'll bring it back. So I went on to stitch down and turn the upper parts, okay, following the curve that I made on this tip, okay, on this end here. Okay, so I follow the curve and I also notched and top stitch. So I'm going to turn it now inside out. Okay, so another thing that I did was that I folded in quarter of an inch here. Can you see it? I folded in quarter of an inch here. Okay, on the one that has collar gum. Okay, that is what I did. I folded in quarter of an inch with the help of my hot iron. Okay, so I'm going to divide the collar into two. That is, fold it into here to ensure that I get the midpoint, and I'm going to notch on the midpoint. Okay, so I'm folding it into two to ensure that I have the midpoint, and I will notch on the midpoint of the main fabric and the midpoint of the lining piece. Okay, this is very important. Okay, so I will notch on both sides, and I'm going to be showing you the next thing we are going to be doing. Okay, so I've notched on the first part, which is the main fabric. This is the second part, the lining piece, and I went on to notch it as well. So I'm bringing my main shirt now, and I'm going to be matching the center back, okay, which is where should also have notch. So I'm going to fold it into two again and notch that midpoint of the back neckline. Okay, so you see I notched it, and I'm going to be placing it notched parts facing notched parts. Okay, so this is where I'm placing it, right side of the lining piece facing the wrong side of my main shirt. Okay, do you see it? Do you see it now? And I'm going to secure with my pin. Okay, so I'm placing notched parts, touching notch parts, facing notch part, and I proceeded to secure with my pin. And I'm just going to be aligning it and securing my pin, and after which I will go over to my machine and I'm going to sew it down. Okay, so please ensure that you secure properly with your pins before you go over to your machine to join. This will help you see if they are equal or one is longer than one. Okay, so you can see mine, I secure my pin, and you can see they are equal. So it means that I won't have any issue joining it. Okay, so I went on to do that. As you can see, can you see I joined it and I notched it very well. Okay, I notched very well, and it's time for me to match this notched parts with the notched part as well of the main fabric here, like this. Okay, so you can see the way I match it, and I'm going to get my pins again and I'll secure it. Okay, so I will arrange it the way I'm going to sew it down, and I'll secure it, and after that I'm going to stop stitch on top neatly, and you can see how neat is going to come out. Okay, so ensure that you do the same thing on your own and make it very neat like mine on more than mine. Okay, so I went on to sew it down. This is what we have. I absolutely love this. It came out very neat, everything very fine, absolutely neat. Okay, looking so professional. So you can see I also went down to sew down this part and the second part as well. You can see how beautiful my shirt is looking. This a man's vintage shirt. Okay, you can see the final outcome. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe. It will not take you anything, like they are not removing anything from you for subscribing. Okay, subscribe, give this video a thumbs up, please drop a comment for me, encourage somebody. Okay, so I'll go ahead and put my button, I'll sew my buttons and make my button holes, and that will be the end of this tutorial. So you can see how easy it is to make a shirt for men. Thank you so much for watching.